Hey guys, it's Jada. I want to talk about practice habits. You hear it a lot. People will say, practice, 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 and it'll make you better, make you perfect, and all these other things. But I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of experienced musicians, not necessarily professional, but there's a lot of people who've been playing a long time and they do not have good practice habits or practice habits at all. And so, um, I want to talk about what a good practice habit is and what that means. Like, how do you practice if you're a beginner or haven't practiced um, in a while? And so, um, let's jump right into this. A good practice habit. One of my really good friends, he said to me one time. He plays bass, but he said, "You you don't practice until you get it right." You practice until you get it wrong. Now, if you take the time to really break down and unpack that statement, when you practice it, you get it right. Let, let's just look at something as simple as let's go to A major. That's the numbers in A major. Or sorry, that's the scale in A major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That is the A major scale. Now, if I'm practicing to get it right, let's say we're practicing and we're doing this here, and then I finally get it, or and then I don't remember the note. I do something like that. That would be the A Lydian, but that's not the A. I've messed up, and I've messed up my fingering. Now I'm getting it. You see what I'm saying? Okay, I practiced. I got it right. I'm done. But that's not the same thing. Okay, so you've seen I played it 3 or 4 times, back and forth, and I didn't get it wrong. That's the difference between practicing till you get it right. You're gonna stop as soon as you do get it right. But practicing it until you can't get it wrong is when you can do it over and over and over. Like you're starting to make that neural connection in your brain. You hear me a lot on this channel talking about the connections your brain makes and things like that when you're doing tactile things. But uh, practicing it until you can't get it wrong is that it's locked in. It goes from your conscious on a very basic level, goes from your conscious to your unconscious, like breathing, not something we think about. It happens automatically, whether we think about it or not. Now, if there's smoke in the air or something like that, we begin to think about our breathing and we work harder at doing different types. But normally that's a subconscious unconscious type of activity. Same with your playing. Doing it one time and you've got it the very first time you got it, that is a very conscious activity. But once you switch it over, you do it over and over and over and over, you start to play it until you can't get it wrong. Like your hands start to do it because they know it now without you even thinking about, oh, hit the A, hit the B, hit the C sharp, hit the D, hit the E, hit the F sharp, hit the G sharp, hit the A. You're not thinking about that anymore. Your unconscious and your subconscious has taken over and it knows what notes to hit without you thinking about each one, which is actually a lot slower. If you're really thinking about this, it's slow to think consciously. It's very quick. It's very smooth. Um, it flows to put these things in your unconscious. Well, how do you put it in your subconscious and your unconscious? You take what you're doing and this is very tedious. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it doesn't have to take a long time. Watch this. Get by your clock and let's see how long this takes. We're gonna do this. Oh, I don't know. Let's go ahead and do it about 20 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, that took me about 1 minute. Now, granted, I know the scale and I have played it for years and years now. But here's the takeaway from this: I wasn't using a metronome. Now, if I was using a metronome, and let's say I actually chose a scale that I didn't know, I might have to start here. Okay, well, when I start there, well, let's go back to how long it took. It took me about a minute to do it at the speed that I was doing it at. And I wasn't going particularly fast or particularly slow. But if I have to start here to get these notes locked into my mind, okay, well, when I get it, I'm going to do it at this speed here. Maybe about, now see, this might take me 20 seconds right here, just doing this. But I might do that about 5 times in a row. Then I'm going to, put it together. Maybe I had to keep my hands separate first. And I might go with my metronome, getting my fingerings correct, do it at that speed. And then once I get it about 5 times, maybe 10, then here, now I'm here, and I might do this about 5 times, okay? Every time I get it 5 or 10 times, and actually I do it 10 because I want to be really locked in with it. So when I get that about 10 times, perfectly right. If I mess up, I start over. That's just me because I want to make sure I've got this locked in. But let's say we get it right 10 times, I'm going to bump up the metronome another 5 beats per minute. And it doesn't matter how slow you start. You can train your hands. Like if you have to start at 30, 35 beats per minute, somewhere in there, do it. Get it to 10 times right, bump it up to 35. Get it to 10 times right, bump it up to 40. 10 times right. And so you'll start getting here. Well, when you get here, you'll see your practice time is decreasing as your efficiency is increasing. And so, and you're putting some mileage behind the chord. You're starting and look at what you're doing while you're learning it. But then, begin to look away, look at other things, the whole thing, so that you can start getting it locked in your subconscious and unconscious parts of your mind. Now, um, Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote a book um, called Outliers, and it's one of my favorite books. I do own it, and actually I own all of his books because the way that he breaks down how people think about things and the way he studies economics is just incredible. But he talked about in Outliers how there's like this 1,000 hour rule of experts. And what they did was they studied experts across history and even current experts, and they noticed that they spent about, or no, maybe, let me see, maybe it's 10,000 hours. I think 1,000 hours is just too low. 10,000 hour rule. But either way, um, they noticed that people spent 10,000 hours to get like to be an expert at what they do. Now that's, I don't remember how many years that is. It might be 10, what is that? 10 to 15 years. We don't have that kind of time. But on the piano, I've broken it down in a little bit different way. Um, Remember, I was saying 5 or 10 times. 10 times is max. Here's what I've discovered. Even with me, when I learn something brand new, a concept that's brand new, if I at first I can't get it, like it's foreign to your hands to do it immediately. So I'm gonna play it through 20 times. And we're talking about after I've gone here. I'm using the scale, but we're talking about once we've already gone super slow, I've broken it down. I'm saying, okay, what am I hitting? What am I hitting next? What is the fingering? I've gotten it. Now I'm here. Okay. I'm at that tempo, or now I'm starting a new count. 20 times when I'm at that speed, that's when I'm starting to see, okay, that's what's going on. 50 times is right when it's like, okay. 20 times is when you're first getting about familiar, but 50 is where you start settling. It's starting to make a little sense in your mind. Like you have it, but it's starting to be a little bit more comfortable. 100 times is right about where you're at ease. It's really starting to flow. You don't have to really think about it nearly as much. Like you're turning down the consciousness of you thinking about these notes that you're playing, or the chords that you're playing, or the progressions, whatever it is, whatever concept it is. 20 times, 50 times, 100 times. So maybe in your first session you want to get to that 20, but then and keep tallies, whether vocally or if you do it over several days, write it down, something like that. But I shoot for 1,000 times per concept before I really want to start saying I'm bringing this out. So it's not 10. I'm not using 10,000 hours per se, but on the piano overall, I'm probably very close to that type of thing because I've been playing for years and years. But to kind of expedite this process for each concept, after about 1,000 times, I'm settled with it. I really can take this concept and I can, use it in that key. I can use it in a different key and things like that. So when you first start a concept, taking it from 0 to 1,000, and then maybe you did 1,000, but then you want to get it to the 10,000. Now, for me, 1,000, you're pretty well set in that particular concept. So I might do this 1,000 times. Am I doing that in a day? No. You saw me play it in 20 times. It took me like a minute. So you playing it 100 times take you about 5 minutes for that one concept. So over the course of 2 weeks, you can learn a whole new concept every 2 weeks, because 5 minutes a day for 10 days, you would have that played 100 times, depending on how long it is. And I even try to do it for some songs. Now that takes obviously a little bit longer, because if I play a song um 100 times, it's probably going to take me about a month, because those are 5 minutes by themselves. So to play them 100 times, that's really some dedication. But the point is, if you get to that, and yes, I do really break down some songs in that fashion, that's when I notice, like, the same applies across the songs. Like, you can half memorize something, you probably got it at about 100, but before you really start seeing the ins and outs of those songs and things like that, it's going to take a little time. And then if I start in a new key, it might take a little time. But by the time I get to the fourth or fifth key on that same thing, it's taking less and less time to see it, because I spent so much time in the earlier time. So your practicing gets easier over the course of time, but it's teaching you discipline, and it's making you be disciplined to get it. You'll start seeing your practice become so much easier because you spent time early. Take it slow, use a metronome. You spent that time to really get it. Once you've really got it, now you can go, you can move, get it faster, faster. Training your fingers for technical speed and accuracy. And then by the time you're in another key, it's going to move quickly because your brain is already understanding what's happening. You know that key, and things like this. So 20, your landmarks are 20, 50. This is what I recommend. 20, 50, and you'll start seeing how you make these connections. 100, and then 1,000 as a goal. Now some of you might push past that, I don't know. But I found those to be some numbers that really start locking in particular things. And are there times that you want to get lazy? Yeah. And there's times that I have gotten lazy and haven't unpacked things all the way to 1,000. I might be at like 200, but I don't know that nearly as well as the things that I've unpacked all the way to 1,000. Try to get there. Make it your goal. Tell me how many things you've gotten to, how many concepts you've gotten to 1,000 in your practicing. Once again, you see, even with this scale, it doesn't take a lot of time just to get to the 20. Okay. And then, so maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes a day on that one concept in the rest of your practice. Even if it took you an hour to get to your 100, you've done it for 1 hour a day. Do it for your 2 weeks. You've got a whole new concept. 10 days, and I keep saying 2 weeks, but over the course of 10 days, if you really are practicing every single day, I just said 2 weeks to stretch it out, Monday through Friday, and taking the weekends off. But every 2 weeks, you could literally be learning a concept because you're spending between 5 minutes and an hour on a particular concept. If that means 5 minutes to an hour to learn that in one key, then 2 weeks later, or 10 days later, the new key. So every 3 months, you could know one concept, or 4 months. Is that 4 months, 10 days? 3 or 4 months. I'm not even going to waste the time doing the math right now, but every 3 or 4 months, you can know one concept in all 12 keys. If it's a long one, if it's a short one, you could possibly do uh 5 minutes on each one of those and spend an hour, and you've done all 12, and then in 10 days you've done all 12 keys in your 10 days because you spent an hour on all of them. So whichever way it breaks down, have great practice, have disciplined practice habits. Like I said, spending, make your benchmarks. 20, that's when you first get it, and get it. I'm talking about get it and get it right. 20, then 50, you'll start seeing the understanding come right before you. 100, you're comfortable. 1,000, we're talking mastery. So you want to do that, take it slow, use your metronome, and have great practice. Discipline, practice habit. Don't practice till you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Have a great day and happy practicing.